Hello, I'm Lukwasa Birak and welcome to Focus on Africa, our top stories. Another twist in Zimbabwe's political row. Tendai Biti, an opposition politician, is in a Harare court charged with inciting public violence. South Sudan's President Salva Kiir has given a blanket amnesty to rebels, including his rival, Riek Machar.
Someone who believes in equal rights and opportunities for men and women.
More poetry from Petra Asante later in the programme, plus we find out why she's a feminist. Also in the programme, cool great-grandma. We find out why fixing car stereos is keeping this great-grandma feeling so young.
Any work involving your hands requires you to use your brain, nothing else. As for your heart, have a clean heart.
And with the English football transfer deadline now shut, one African star who's made the move is Cameroon international Anguissa. Hello there, and thank you for joining us on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Well, the Zimbabwean opposition politician Tendai Biti has appeared in court in Harare, and he's been charged with inciting public violence, he's been trying to seek political asylum. Now, the charges stem from the recent political presidential election, which was won by the incumbent Emmerson Mnangagwa. So just who is Tendai Biti and why is he so important in this post-election period? Well, Prudent Nsengyumva has been finding out.
He's a well-known name in Zimbabwe's politics and helped launch the movement for democratic change in 1999 to challenge the then President Robert Mugabe's grip on power. Mr. Biti became Zimbabwe's finance minister and was credited for stabilizing the country's sluggish economy. The relationship wasn't always smooth. Tendai Biti once referred to Mr. Mugabe as a dictator. Like many MDC activists, Mr. Biti's trouble with the law aren't new. In 2008, he was released on bail after being charged with treason. His latest arrest in the capital follows his deportation after Zambia's government rejected his request for asylum on Wednesday. He fled to Zambia after Zimbabwean police issued an arrest warrant for him after accusing him of inciting violence. His party has rejected President Emmerson Mnangagwa's victory in last week's elections, saying the result was rigged. Despite his long-term political nemesis, Robert Mugabe out of the helm, Mr. Biti's detention will be seen as a fresh reminder of how long journey Zimbabwe still has to go as the country tries to move from post-Mugabe era. Petra Asante, BBC News.
Well, joining me now from the Zambian capital, Lusaka, is Tendai Biti's lawyer, Gilbert Piri. Thank you for joining us this evening on Focus on Africa. First off, could you please just update us on the latest status of Mr. Biti?
Indeed, thank you for having me. What we are hearing from Zimbabwe is that he was taken before the magistrate court on the charges of inciting public violence, but we hear that he was granted bail on that charge. We are yet to get full information. We hope that he's granted bail on all the charges that he's facing.
What are your thoughts? Because there has been so much confusion surrounding Tendai Biti over the last 24, 48 hours. What on earth has happened with the legal process in Zambia?
Indeed, you know, yesterday when Tendai Biti came into Zambia and sought asylum, he was kept at the border, which is called Chirundu, which is between Zambia and Zimbabwe, awaiting an outcome on the application for asylum. But as the day wore on, it became clear that this was not going to be granted, and news filtered through that, in fact, a decision had been made to remove him from Zambia, and this therefore made us to approach the High Court in Lusaka to seek an order that he should not be removed and sent back to Zimbabwe, because he was facing persecution in Zimbabwe, and clearly that's why he had come to Zambia. The High Court did grant the order, requesting or commanding that Tendai Biti be brought to Lusaka today at 8 hours so that he's able to make his application for judicial review. And the order that you're seeking was that he should not be removed from Zambia and sent back to Zimbabwe.
Okay, so just very quickly, so an order was granted by Zambian courts. Why was this
Indeed,
overruled? Why was it overruled?
In fact, it was defied by Zambia's law enforcement forces, the police and immigration, because the order was served on them around 04 today in Chirundu. And they were aware of the order of the High Court, but they proceeded 2 hours later to forcibly remove Mr. Biti and the other 5 or 6 people that he was with and handed them back to Zimbabwean law enforcement officers.
Mr. Piri, do you think...
in clear defiance of a clear court order.
Okay, Mr. Piri, do you think this has anything to do with Mr. Biti's criticism of President Lungu last year?
Well, really, I wouldn't want to speculate. I wouldn't know, but I wouldn't rule that one out, indeed.
Okay.
Because I don't see how a police officer can wake up and decide that he's removing Mr. Tendai Biti from Zambia. Obviously, it's a political decision.
Thank you very much indeed. But as we understand it, he has been given bail.
Indeed.
Okay.
On one of the charges, he's been given bail by the magistrate court in Zimbabwe.
Okay. Mr. Piri, we'll leave it there for now. Thank you very much for that update. Thank you. Okay, let's go to South Sudan now, where President Salva Kiir has granted a blanket amnesty to rebels, including his rival, maybe his former rival, Riek Machar. So let's just take a look at the key points. Now, 3 days ago, President Kiir and Riek Machar signed that power-sharing deal. The deal will see the rebel leader, Mr. Machar, return to government, and he'll be there as one of 5 vice presidents. Well, what sort of reaction has there been? The international community has been in support of this latest development. The hope is essentially that the nation's bloody 5-year civil war will come to an end. The announcement of that amnesty was made on Wednesday evening on state television. A presidential decree said the amnesty includes Mr. Machar and estranged groups that have waged war against the government. Well, joining us now is Brian Adeba. He is the Associate Director of Policy at the Enough Project, a non-profit human rights organisation. What should we read into this amnesty?
I think it's a positive gesture in light of the fact that it's a positive gesture that would build the confidence required to implement the peace agreement. And it comes at a very important time, especially in light of the fact that the president refused to shake Riek Machar's hand in Khartoum, in the hall where the peace agreement was signed, and also in light of the less than reconciliatory speech he made after he arrived from Khartoum in Juba, speaking to his audience. But the real issue here is the devil in the details in the implementation of the agreement, and especially the components on security arrangements. There are 2 critical matters here. One is the security arrangements regarding the protection of Riek Machar and the other vice presidents when they set foot in Juba. If you look at the agreement, the terms are rather ambiguous at this particular point. It says that the protection will be provided by a joint force formed of rebel forces and the UN peacekeeping force in South Sudan. How that will pan out in practice remains to be seen, and it is a major point of contention that could be a flashpoint, and we should all watch out for that. Secondly, the issue of cantonning rebel troops, that is an issue. The government of South Sudan is very well known for its corrupt practices, and it's been fingered by a number of international organizations for that, including its own Auditor General. Now, with cantonment, you have the issue of who will foot the bill for assembling these troops. In the past, the international community has refrained from funding cantonment processes. Now, the task will fall on the government to carry out this, to fund the process. Now, given the rampant corruption prevalent in the government, that is going to be a particular challenge.
Mr. Adeba, can I just jump in there very quickly? We were given the impression that the signing, everybody was happy with this. But from what you're saying, if some of the rebel groups are not happy, firstly, were they not consulted as part of the consultation process? And IGAD, I understand, are currently in Khartoum discussing the final details of this agreement. Do they have final say, even though the two leaders have signed?
Well, that really remains to be seen. The impression that we're getting is that this is the final deal. Indeed, there was some consultation, but consultation that has not really solved the differences that some groups have, the particular issues they have with segments of the agreement. Those were not resolved, and that's why you have people outside the agreement.
Okay. Brian Adeba speaking to us there from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much for your time. You're watching Focus on Africa, coming to you from BBC World News. A quick look at the other headlines across Africa and the rest of the world. And a boat which saved 87 migrants in distress off the coast of Libya has docked in Spain after roaming the Mediterranean for several days. It's the third ship to be allowed into the Spanish port in 2 months since the Italian government refused to allow migrants in. The migrants, nearly all from Sudan, including Darfur, had spent 50 hours at sea on board an inflatable boat with no drinking water. Another strong tremor has hit the Indonesian island of Lombok as the number of people killed by Sunday's earthquake continues to climb. The aftershock, measuring 5.9 magnitude, brought down buildings as rescue workers continue to dig through the rubble in order to try and reach trapped survivors. The official death toll stands at 259. However, local media are reporting figures as high as 340. And look at this. Well, this happened, it's not in Africa, this happened at Arsenal's training grounds in Herefordshire in southern England earlier today. The Gunners were treated to some Great Lakes musical culture after Rwandan drummers and dancers paid the team. Yes, it was a surprise visit. The English Premier League side have been sponsored by Rwanda's National Tourist Board to visit Rwanda since May in a deal said to be worth $39 million. Not a bad day at the office. Now, this lady here behind me is Petra Asante. She's a Ghanaian poet, but a poet with a purpose, and that is to tell the stories that matter to her generation, from mental health to feminism and colorism. We have discussed this on Focus, haven't we? Now, Petra finds a way to share her truths with the world. She's best known in Ghana as a spoken word artist, but when she dropped by the Focus on Africa studio, she explained why she thinks she's much more than that.
Dum 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 dum, dum 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 dum, dum 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 dum, dum 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 dum. I like to call myself a storyteller because it encompasses all the ways in which I can tell a story. It doesn't box me into being a poet or a singer. It means I can employ all these techniques to tell a story. Life influences my writing. I always say that I am influenced by who I am, where I'm from, and the people that I am around. And so constantly what I write about is what is presently pressing in my life. When they ask if you're a feminist, will your hand shoot up? Will you be a supporting act or a qualifier for the cause? If it's women issues that are pressing in my life, that is reflective in my work. If it's politics, it's reflective in my work. If it's violence, abuse, it's reflective in my work. Whatever is happening around me and to the people around me is what influences my work.
Soften your muscles. Don't be too boyish. You don't want to have kids? There must be a glitch.
I like to use myself as a representation of the youth or my generation. And mental health is something that we don't talk about enough, or even if we do talk about it, there aren't enough avenues to address it. And a lot of people my age are going through depression, anxiety.
Pit women against each other. Let's find out who is fresher.
Colorism has been very, very alive and thriving in the Ghanaian community or in the African community. And The media plays a very relevant role in pushing this narrative. For years, we've seen that people, even in the music industry, rappers, singers alike, whenever they are doing music videos, the women who represent in these videos are lighter skinned. There are jokes about men preferring lighter skinned women because when the lights go off in Accra, you can see the lighter skinned women. But it's a bias that exists that I experience subliminally all the time. Feminist. Merriam-Webster definition: someone who believes in equal rights and opportunities for men and women. When they ask if you're a feminist, will your hand shoot up? Choosing daily to pursue poetry. It's an act of bravery. I wake up and tell myself, you said you're a poet, work towards it. And it's pretty much like everybody who has a goal. If you're an actor, if you're a singer, if you're whichever direction you take, just choosing to constantly and consistently do it is how I manage and push myself towards it.
Petra Asante with her. You're watching Focus on Africa, coming to you from BBC World News. I'm Laquesta Burek. Still to come, Mimi will have the sport as Mohamed Salah makes it onto the shortlist of the Champions League Awards. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching Focus on Africa. A reminder of our top stories this hour. And the Zimbabwean opposition politician Tendai Biti has been charged with inciting post-election violence and having illegally announced poll results in a court in Harare. South Sudan's President Salva Kiir has announced an amnesty for rival Riek Machar and other rebels. This comes 4 days after a power-sharing deal was signed by Mr. Kiir and Mr. Machar. Now, 5 years ago, the world's leading diamond producer, De Beers, moved the sales and sorting arm of its operations from London to Botswana. The move was aimed at transforming the country into a major international centre. But as BBC Africa's Veronique Edwards reports from the capital, Gaborone, there is concern that the relocation of a company dubbed one of the most successful public-private partnerships in the world hasn't quite benefited the locals.
Gaborone, Botswana's capital, now looks more like a big building site. The city has been transformed in the last few years thanks to a growing mining industry. For nearly 80 years, the processing, sorting and selling of Botswana's diamonds was done in London. But after years of campaigning, the Beers Mining Company finally moved its operations to Gaborone 5 years ago. This highly restricted building is where all the diamonds mined in Botswana are sorted and valued. Some of the diamond cutting and polishing companies that were set up have been taking advantage of a provision that allows them to export certain percentage of their diamonds without treating them. As such, unfinished diamonds have been sent to countries like Cambodia or Thailand, whilst hundreds of workers in Botswana have been laid off.
A lot of retrenchments as far as diamond cutting, polishing is concerned. If you look at the current employed staff at those that exist, and I think there are 16 of them. This is the ones that exist in Botswana, site holders in Botswana. It's on a very minimal basis.
The government, for their part, says the relocation of the BS in time will turn Botswana into the global center for diamond trade. So far, it says it has had a positive impact on the hospitality sector.
The hotel business has benefited, transportation has benefited, even the banks, because we insisted that payments from the sites be made through Botswana banks. So before the money can go out to London or Antwerp, the Botswana banks would have benefited in terms of bank charges.
Many here remain skeptical of the true value of the DBS relocation to their capital, but the idea is still highly appealing, and other countries on the continent are keen to follow suit, wanting to negotiate better deals with mining companies operating within their borders. Veronique Edwards, BBC News, Gaborone.
You're watching Focus on Africa, and we've brought a bit of Ireland to Africa. Mimi.
Thank you very much, Loquessa. Now, the English football transfer window has now shut, and one African star who has made a move is Cameroon international Andre Frank Zambo Anguissa. It's been reported that newly promoted English Premier League club Fulham have agreed a deal to sign the Marseille midfielder in the region of over $28 million. And there's been some more transfer news to bring you. Crystal Palace have finalized a deal to sign Swansea and Ghana international Jordan Ayew on a season-long loan. Is subject to a 26-year-old passing a medical today. And still in football, Egypt's Mohamed Salah has made it onto the Champions League awards shortlist. The Liverpool star has made the list for the best forwards in the Champions League last season, along with Ronaldo and Messi. Salah's incredible run saw him score 10 goals and 4 assists. The winners will be announced during the Champions League draw at the end of the month. Now, after their first match loss, Nigeria have now bounced back with a 1-0 win against Haiti in the Women's Under-20 World Cup in France. Rasheedat Ajibade got on the score sheet with a 36-minute penalty, helping to move Nigeria to second in Group D. They are now 3 points behind leaders Germany. The final group game will be against China on Monday. And finally, to table tennis, where the International Table Tennis Federation Challenge Nigeria Open has begun. It's been seen as one of Africa's top elite table tennis events. More than 20 countries will be taking part, with players from around the globe competing. The tournament's organizer explains why it's a popular sport amongst many.
It's a game played by everybody. Even the top footballers in Nigeria play table tennis. So I think that's why it has its popularity.
The most important for Olympics is to be a participant, to be able to participate, you know. But here, it's a different mentality. You just have to win. They don't know any other thing than to win.
And that's all the sport. Back to you, Loquessa.
People would think that we coordinate our wardrobe, wouldn't they?
And we never do, actually.
Mimi, thank you very much. Now, it's not something you'd imagine not just a grandmother, but also a great-grandmother. This is Cecilia Wangari. She's 78 years old, and she's a specialist in fitting and installing car stereos. She actually started the family business in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, after she'd encouraged her son to learn how to fix and repair car stereos. She's not happy with that. She thought, do you know what? I'm going to do that. And she did it simply by watching him work. Here's her story.
Any work involving your hands requires you to use your brain, nothing else. As for your heart, have a clean heart. My name is Cecilia Wangari Kiminda. I work as a car stereo technician. When the beat drops, even I just bob my head. I love this job. My whole family does it. Shosh Sounds is located along Oterengi Road, Kariobangi South. Anyone who loves music, wants to live a good life, comes to install a car music system. When I talk to people, I become happy. You know, working out is like that. I'm as nimble as a trap, but if I act like I'm old, waking up will be a problem, talking will be a problem, and now I feel I'm okay. Work is important, and it should continue so that we eradicate poverty.
Did you hear what she said? When the beat drops, even I nod my head. She's so cool, I love her. Now, before we go here on Focus on Africa, let's just remind you of our top story this evening, and it comes from the latest events in Zambia and Zimbabwe. Now, the Zimbabwe opposition politician Tendai Biti has appeared in court. He was charged with inciting public violence and having illegally announced poll results. We understand that he was deported from Zambia, although in Harare, the Harare courts have now granted him bail. We'll have more on this tomorrow, and in the meantime, plenty more also on our website. If you want to get in touch, on Twitter, I'm @Lukwesa Birak. See you tomorrow.